80% of my time is working on the plans of what's necessary to take control of these bureaucracies, and we are working doggedly on that, whether it's destroying their agency's notion of independence. They're independent from the president.
So that is Russel Vought in that video right there. And up until recently, he was notable primarily because he's one of the architects of Project 2025, the thing that obviously was going to be Donald Trump's agenda. That was very clear, and that's how it's going. He says there, these agencies and their supposed independence. They're independent agencies. That's how they were set up. But he doesn't believe that. He believes that the president should be king, should be emperor, should have unilateral control over all of this. Sorry, assuming it's a Republican. If it's a Democrat, then independent agency is the most important thing in the world. But anyway, all of that would be well and good, except that he is no longer just the architect of Project 2025. He was confirmed last night by the Senate to lead the Office of Management and Budget, which is an incredibly important part of the executive branch. So he's returning to the White House to do exactly what he said he was going to do, both in that video and in Project 2025. And the thing about heading up the OMB is it doesn't necessarily draw a lot of attention, certainly by the public, even by the media for what they do. But what they do is incredibly crucial for setting the president's agenda and actually making change. And he's been very clear about what he wants to do in that sort of role. He had said in Project 2025 that the OMB, which he now heads, is a quote, president's air traffic control system and should be involved in all aspects of the White House policy process, becoming powerful enough to override implementing agencies' bureaucracies. And so that's what he wants to do. All these different agencies filled with, like career experts and things like that. Those who haven't already been fired, those who haven't already been, doxxed or had their pay cut by Doge or whatever, their autonomy is going to be gone. And he's talked a lot about his plans, and I think it's important that we familiarize ourselves with them so we know what's to come. So here is Vought back in 2023 in a private speech, and take a look at what he's saying here.
We want the bureaucrats to be traumatically affected. We want, when they wake up in the morning, we want them to not want to go to work because they are increasingly viewed as the villains. We want their funding to be shut down so that the EPA can't do all of the rules against our energy industry because they have no bandwidth financially to do so. We want to put them in trauma.
Yes, so we want them to be in trauma, to not have autonomy, to not have the bandwidth, to not have the budget, to not have the expertise, so the background to do that stuff. That's how they're staffing it. And to be very clear, because I know we have some conservatives that watch the show, you'll notice that nowhere in any of that did he say that that would benefit the American people. They're barely even pretending that anymore. No, the reason that you want to shut down all of these agencies, particularly things like the EPA, the reason you want to shred all these regulations are that regulations confine and constrain the wealthy, the elites, both at the individual and at the corporate level. And they have no interest in that because Vought, like Donald Trump, like Elon Musk, are both of and tools for the 1%. And so all these organizations that theoretically might, for instance, he wants to bring up the EPA, might protect you from toxic emissions and things like that from these corporations, might allow you to sue them, be compensated if your land is ruined or if your health is ruined, if your families are damaged. That's all going to be gone, but it's okay. Those who already have the most in society will have slightly more. And so I know that all the big fans of Project 2025 are cheering today. They're totally happy that they got Vought in. I'm sad not only for America and for people, like on the Democratic side, but also for the many conservatives whose lives will be made worse because of this sort of appointment. And so we have a little bit more reaction from Elizabeth Warren to Vought. But Waz, I want to start with you. What do you make of this?
I don't think anybody should be surprised. I think, during the campaign, when Project 25 somehow broke through the public consciousness and became really unpopular, Trump did everything that he could to distance himself from the entire operation, right? Just be like, yo, that's the Heritage Foundation's pet baby. That has nothing to do with me and MAGA. And, I'm an independent actor. I have nothing to do with that. But, underneath the surface, it doesn't take hard to understand. Like, it's this expansive undertaking the entire Project 25 thing was. 25 thing was, and it's hard to staff a Republican administration that doesn't have people who were a part of this. Like, so many people worked on this Project 25 thing. Inevitably, many of them would have been tapped to staff the Trump White House. So, we shouldn't be surprised that this guy who was leading the charge got pushed through, because the Heritage Foundation is very influential within the GOP. So nobody should be shocked by this.
Yeah, not only is that true, I find it just stunning that people are in uproar about it now, when this is the exact position that Vought held in Trump's first term. You re-elect a madman who has a very clear mission that he has been crystallizing during a very long campaign and during 4 years of Truth Social posting before that, despite his unbelievable denials that he knew nothing about Project 2025 when all of his closest advisors were the architects of it. He gets reelected. This is exactly what's going to happen. It was clear as day that you were going to have Trump 2.0 ramped up to the nth degree, and that's what you're getting. As Vought himself said, the director of the Office of Management and Budget for the White House is, and I quote, "the best, most comprehensive approximation of the president's mind." I mean, like you said, John, it's an under the radar group, but this is the group that sets the policy, that interacts with the agencies, that decides what the agenda will be in a very real, on the ground, practical way. And this is who you've appointed. You can't be surprised when the person who probably has the most extreme version of the old conservative adage of they want a government so small you can drown it in the bathtub. Inherent in that is drowning in the bathtub. It's not somebody that has any desire to run something more efficiently. They want to kill it. And that's what they're doing. They want to kill any oversight. They just want, as you said, to line their own pockets, and it's just very transparent.
Yeah, it's definitely true. Although, to go back to what I said earlier, considering the goal of all this, I think that we should update that phrase. They want a government so small that corporate America can drown you in your bathtub, I think, and get away with it and have there be no consequences. But you're totally right. The mind analogy that they gave. But the thing is with Donald Trump, I don't even know if it's like a reflection of his mind. I think it's a replacement for his mind. Like, I know that, the Trump cult or whatever, they love Donald Trump. They think he's like the biggest alpha or whatever. But like, I don't know, Elon Musk's off rampaging around. We'll talk about him later on the hour, doing all the stuff that he wants to do. Vought's gonna be holding it down at the OMB, doing all of his Project 2025 stuff. Meanwhile, Donald Trump is sitting in the Oval Office having binders handed to him and being told what the executive orders do. And then he gets to like scribble his signature or whatever. It doesn't really feel like, it doesn't feel like he's running much of anything. It feels like he's just, rather than him being sort of like a proxy for the donors, they're just all in there. All the donors are just directly in control of these things. And he gets to like, I don't know, ban paper straws or whatever stupid thing he thinks makes him look cool or something. And meanwhile, the wealthiest people in the country they're just directly taking a hand. And so we'll discuss a little bit more. I do want to throw it though, because I said I would, to Elizabeth Warren. So she obviously wasn't successful in stopping him, but she'd argued vigorously against him. And here's some of what she had to say.
Russell Vought has called for outlawing abortion, medication abortion, nationwide. Doesn't matter whether or not you live in a state that says, no, we are going to protect abortion. Russell Vought wants to find a way to make sure it's shut down everywhere. He wants to encourage discrimination against transgender people. And he says he wants to put federal workers in trauma and destroy the merit-based system for civil servants so he can fill up our government with right-wing extremists. Russell Vought was the puppet master behind the funding shutdown that threw this country into chaos last week. If he is confirmed, you can absolutely bet on Russell Vought pulling out the rug from working people over and over and over again. It is up to us. I'm not lying down and playing dead, and I hope nobody else does either.
And look, the unfortunate thing is whether you want to describe some of these Republican senators as playing dead or just being happy that this guy gets in, because as I believe Waz, you were pointing out, like he's Heritage Foundation. This is like the stuff they want to do. It's in every one of these areas. It's a more extreme version of what they would have been comfortable pushing for before, but it's in line with the insanity that they've been pushing for. Usually, it's tempered by senators worried about re-election or a president who doesn't want to be unpopular. But all the brakes are off or whatever. And we should remember there is a reason that Donald Trump tried to run away from Project 2025. It's because they'd identified that people don't like this stuff. A lot of people don't like this stuff. And the thing about it is, they're not going to like this stuff. They didn't like it when it was a plan. You think they're gonna like it when it's actually in effect, when it's screwing them and their family's finances over? I don't think that they will. But the question is, like, which proceeds faster? The damage they can do, especially the long-term damage that like will last, it will be very difficult to root out. Or people's knowledge of what's happening and catching up in terms of not liking what they're seeing. And I do think that we see some early signs of that, and we can discuss this. There were these polls of how interested Republicans are in Elon Musk having a lot of influence over the administration, and half of that group from back in September now doesn't want him to have a lot of influence over Trump. So I think there's a lot of people that don't like what they're seeing. But again, the OMB is a little bit more stealth. It's a little bit more camouflaged. So, and especially when you combine that with the way the media has sort of self-destructed, defanged themselves over the last year, it's possible they could do a lot of damage without people necessarily seeing. But Ben, any final thoughts about this?
Yeah, look, I think, not just is this a Heritage Foundation guy, in the years between terms, he himself founded and ran Trump, basically MAGA think tanks. It's not a surprise. And so when you say, John, that it's true, it's not really an approximation of the president's mind when he's being fed that, but that's the best way with Donald Trump to ensure that you are approximating his mind, is to tell him what he thinks. He doesn't have an ideology. He's a person that gets nefarious ideas run by him. And he's like, that sounds pretty good. That sounds like something I could do. And then he just goes and does it. And so when you write the script for a person who can't even spell his own name, as you see the scribbles there that you mentioned, he takes a long time signing his own name to not have one letter be discernible there. He could at least do it quicker. Although then there would be faster executive orders, and that would be a problem. Maybe that's one of the only benefits. One of the only guardrails is the amount of time that he spends signing his own name.
We've got that on our side. Was any other thoughts?
I think the way that they've started this whole government bureaucracy defunding is quite telling. The first agency they go after is USAID, and that's an easy PR win. They can go out and tell their voters, why the hell are we sending aid to places like Africa and other places when we have our own problems here? And it looks like they're doing something that benefits people. And I think generally speaking, even something like the EPA, it's hard for the American people, somebody who wakes up at 6 o'clock every morning to make their kids lunch and send them off to school before going to work, for them to understand how the EPA is working every day in their lives. And you know what? It'd be nice if there was another party who could go out and make the affirmative case for these government bureaucracies as a check on corporate power. But the problem is the Democratic Party is wholly bought and sold by the corporate interests in our company. So they, in our country. And so they can't come out and take a muscular stance against the corporate interests and say, look, these agencies, these government bureaucracies are guardrails. They're the referees in our system. We need them in place because these people, yes, God bless them, it's America. You're allowed to go out and make money, but they can't be counted on to put a pause to the money making no matter what. They will throw all of our citizens under the bus when it comes to the profit motive. And we need people, we need agencies to go out and be a check on that. But the Democrats can't do that. You can't do that when your brother-in-law is some freaking Uber CEO. You're taking meetings with Google the same day Joe Biden's Justice Department is suing them. You can't go out and make that case. And so until these cuts start to touch people where they actually live, something like the DOE cutting off special education or school lunches, et cetera, until it actually affects everyday Americans' lives, most people are not gonna understand why they should care that these agencies are being defunded. And it's because the Democrats have never made an affirmative case for them.
You sound to me like a person who's not been listening to Chuck Schumer this week, because he has been spitting hot fire.
Dude, they're talking about these guys didn't fill out the right forms. That's the case they're making. There's some, clerical error case, and not why it's important that we have these agencies in the first place.
I mean, look, to Ben's point, if we could just have Trump fill out the forms, that might take a while. That might slow down his agenda.
True, and it's already slowed. Well, it's already slowed down plenty by Chuck Schumer's aggressive stance. I believe I've never been so inspired politically when I think this week he said, and what we must do is stop it as soon as possible. I mean, bro, the country has crumbled during your statement. Can you possibly put a little zest in your voice?
He can't move too fast because his glasses are always just a millimeter from falling off the end of his nose. So you gotta just keep it together.
Get a bifocal, bro. Please do something different.
Yeah, or retire. Step down from leadership or whatever. You can still be a senator for a little bit, or step down, let AOC become a senator, join leader. Like, come on, there are people. I'm not even saying they necessarily succeed, because it's super difficult and they have very little power over this. But at least the American people would see them to be trying. And I think that would be a significant improvement.
Thanks for watching the Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.